What's the secret to our secret? There's no real secret, but I'll let you know soon. So the big question that everybody has, if you're in the Toronto GTA market, is how do two millennials afford their first time home without their parents' help, without any contribution from anybody outside? So we got into a bidding war and won in July 2020 and won on our first home and moved in September or October 2020. And that was it was almost 2 years ago. And we thought the market was crazy back then, but now, yeah, wow. If you're new to my home journey, welcome. I bought my first home with my boyfriend Stefan, and we are DIYing our own home renovations, and I'm here to share as much as I can with you about our journey into buying a home. And I'd like to share the pains and the struggles of what we went through. It was a tough and super stressful. There is no other way to make it any less stressful aside from preparing yourself with as much knowledge as possible. And today I'm sharing with you how we got our finances together to get into our first home, including mortgage, down payment, how much we were approved for. So everything listed, including house price. So let's get into it. Steph and I started living together in 2015, and I thought I'd be renting my whole life. My first job out of university, I lived in New York for like a brief moment, making $35K, and my rent was $14.50, which meant over half my income was going into rent. And then I got into just a regular corporate job in Toronto. So Steph and I decided to move out together. The first thing that I would say about where you are right now is to evaluate your current living situation. Things to take into account are affordability. Where you are right now, is it within your budget, and are you able to afford it plus have savings? Do you have room to spare to put away some money? Or are you stretched to the limit, and is it someplace that you think is worth living in? So a lot of things can affect where you live. Location, it might be close to work depending on if you commute or if you work from home now, or if it's a living space that you think justifies the value. Where we first lived, I found the place on Kijiji. It was listed for $10.50. And I was so full of myself because I was like, I talked the landlord down $50 a month, which is $600 a year. But where we were living was a split level house, and the landlord was a contractor, and he had split the house into 3 separate units. So our unit was the main floor. We didn't have a front door. You have to go around to the backyard, and the backyard sliding door was our front door. This is the super weird aspect, is that is our front door. And the rent was cheap. It was $1,000 for the place near the subway station. So that's like $500 each, hydro and everything included. Except obviously the place is not up to code, and then our landlord had his relatives move upstairs, and it was like domestic level of a lot going on every day. It was very stressful living in the house. That was when I was working a full-time job, and then I'd have to use any spare hours that I could to film, and if it's loud, I just couldn't get it, and that was what I had to live with. So we didn't last very long. We moved out after a year. So this is where you're living could be worth the value, or maybe it's time to evaluate where you are and figure out whether a move or shopping around for a better place might be worth it. I would just map out your long-term goals about where you want to be in a few years, and if you are aiming to buy a home in the future, maybe it's worth it to sacrifice a longer commute time so that you can save up for that home. The place that we lived in before we bought our place here was also pretty cheap. We personally knew the landlords, and we had a good, like, just at market rate deal of $2,000 for a 2-bedroom place. It was quite a leap in expenses, but at that point I had quit my job. I mean, kind of risky. I was going into YouTube full time. At that time, I thought that it was a worthy risk in order to get, a space that I could work in. It was considered a studio that I could write off partially, being self-employed now. And for Steph moving on up in his career, he was doing well as well, that we could financially afford it. And we were still managing to do savings. So a couple years down the line, we've been renting for a while, saving for a bit. We have never combined our finances. Our financial personalities, let's say, were very similar. We combined finances to one joint account so that we could have easy direct deposits going in for rent. And now we were paying for our own hydro and then still saving up some because that was going to be our account to go on trips and do extra things. So we put like a comfy amount every month into that account. I'm not really sure who started the conversation, but we were talking about owning. So Steph, being a car guy, has always needed a garage. Every time he had to work on his car, he had to go over to his parents' house and work on it. And his car was not a welcome guest at his parents' place. So this leads to the big secret. How do two people come together as a couple and join finances to get into a home together? The secret is Stefan drove a $400 Toyota for 7 years. Also, the secret is dual income, no debt. This sort of frustrates me because I myself have not seen it online, but there are a ton of privileges attached to somebody buying a home. Both Steph and I came from middle-class families who paid for our education. That alone eradicates so much, leverages so much for you to buy. I'm like waving my arms around because I'm just so passionate about this. Okay, you think about somebody who paid tens of thousands of dollars in debt for schooling, earning money, having to pay off the OSAP loan with interest over time. And then on top of that, both of us have been steady earners for several years. Each family from both sides are dual income parents who work on their own, make their own income, do not rely on the kids. So we have no dependents and we had no obligations to pay back for the family. We both had to pay rent when we were living with our parents, but my parents asked me for money. I'd be like, okay, how much? Let me give you my kidney. I couldn't have done this without Steph. Steph couldn't have done this without me. We couldn't have done this without our parents, period. Yeah, I'm calling all the sus sneaky millennials out. If we're gonna talk about buying homes, we have to also give credit to how we got there. We kind of have to dismantle that notion where as long as you work hard, you'll get somewhere, because it's not that simple for a lot of people. So, is owning worth it? Yes, it is a great investment, but let me tell you, our expenses that don't get covered, that disappear every month. Property tax, $330 a month. Internet, $80. Hydro, $75. Gas, $70. And water, $56. Back when I was living in an apartment, hydro covered water and electricity. And all of a sudden you're telling me hydro, which means water, means electricity, and then water means water. I can't explain it. And our mortgage payment every month, currently, before the interest rate goes up, which it is gonna go up in March, is $21.90 a month. So that is math. A month! Compared to our rent, that was $2,000 a month, and then before that, $1,000 a month, everything included. Yeah, that's pretty steep. This is money that possibly could have been saved for something else. The home that we got into is considered a starter home for us. It's a semi-detached. Steph's already outgrown the garage. I just happen to be with somebody that has a very expensive hobby, passion, and I respect that. But we know that this home is not the perfect fit for us. But when we're looking at the current market right now, what we thought was crazy is nothing compared to what it is now, and it's incredibly discouraging. I totally feel you. I think with our living situation specifically, we need a house and we need something with a garage because of this guy. Yes, our house right now is valued at much more and we could sell and earn a lot, but we still have to buy in this insane market, and we have to pay back on interest, which from currently our interest would be, how do I do that? Insert interest here. This is something that I have always been really interested in after seeing one documentary about it, is communal living.
We live 20 families together. The houses are close to each other.
And I was enchanted by being able to live in a space where you have your own privacy and you have your own living quarters, but you know, there's quite a lot of shared public areas that even now I'm like, do I need to be having all this to myself? It feels, single family living is to me very unsustainable, because why does every family need their own lawnmower, their own set of equipments, and their own set of tools when we could all be sharing it within a community, as well as sharing skills? So this is something that I would love to see in the future, and I would love to participate in the future. So when I took a look at my savings, I had been contributing monthly into an RRSP. I was doing that annually, and I've been working since I was 17. I have not been unemployed since 2007, and on top of that, my parents set up mutual funds for us when we were younger, and that included little payments that they had from death of relatives and passive growth over time. I worked almost 2 years at a corporate job, and so they did a RRSP contribution, so I maxed that out as well. So every month if I contributed the max amount, they would also match that pay. By 2020, when I was ready to pull that all out in order to contribute to the down payment, I had $79,000. Now Steph, on the other hand, he started his mutual funds on his own, I think when he became independent adult, and then also did the max RRSP contribution plan. But because he hadn't been saving for that long, he had less to contribute. But we were able to pull together $150K, which is 20% of our down payment.
Post-pro Letitia here. There is quite a disparity in who contributed how much, keeping in mind that Steph makes more than me, or has been making more than me. I'm hoping to make more than him eventually. Not that it's a competition. But we worked this out. This is why having a prenup involved is great. Having an agreement ahead of time so that he can pay me back over the years, and whatever profits, however we're going to split it when we sell, is split evenly. Otherwise, just have all your bases covered.
Our house in the end costed $750K, which was the max of our budget. So when people tell you it's never too late to start, they really mean it. As soon as you can start saving, whatever you can start saving, set up an auto deposit. It's money that disappears every month that you don't think about. And over time, you'll realize that you actually did contribute something to it. And when I say our parents didn't contribute any money to the house, it doesn't mean that they weren't contributing to us when we were kids. Interesting fact, in 2021, 30% of Canadians relied on their parents to give some kind of monetary contribution to their down payment. In Toronto, the average dollar amount of that gift size that they contributed was $130,000. Our parents, yeah, I personally feel a little icky not sharing that, you know, we were sort of put into this position to be able to buy this house. It's not like, you know, started from the bottom, now we're here. This is a huge warning for anybody that's self-employed, because somebody that is self-employed has to jump through so many hoops to prove your income, and to prove your income over the past 3 years. And if you have an auntie that was so good at accounting and so good at writing off things, but now it proves that you've made very little income the past couple of years, you get put in a pretty tricky spot. Steph just had to waddle into the bank and hand in his last 2 pay slips, and that was it. Or like a T4 or something. It was very simple. Me, I had to submit notice of assessment for the past 3 years, financial statements for the past 2 years, as well as T1s for the past year. If you took CERB or any financial assistance during the pandemic, it affects your chances of getting approved for a certain amount. Unless you were looking to buy a house and you had a mortgage specialist lined up to check with them first, you wouldn't have known that. Because there was a point where I was like, kinda need it, but okay, I'm just gonna stretch it for a little bit longer. And so I skipped out on it, which benefited me in the end. Anything that can affect your credit score is considered something against you, and it'll affect you. So my problem that I ran into was the past couple of years of income. A lot of things were unsteady. So we got our approval started in 2020. And if I had to prove the last 3 years of my income, I started working full-time for YouTube in 2016, which means that in 2017, I made not that much. And then 2018, I made a little bit more than not that much. So I had an auntie help me write off as much as I could. I remember the first year that I did this, she was like, you qualify for low income return. So I got a big payback from the government. This time around, this was before tax season, and our mortgage guy told me, you have to go to your accountant and you have to claim a much higher income, but not too high, because then they'll see it as a red flag. They need to see steady growth of your business over time. And so we were only approved of 600K for the home. You could be approved for a lot more, and that doesn't mean that you're able to pay that back. So when we got to our specialists, we were like, oh, but we have 150K lined up for a down payment. Wouldn't that help us get into a better place? He told us that the bank doesn't care how much you have down payment. They just need to know that the loan that they're giving to you, you have a high chance of paying it back. If you don't end up paying 20%, there is such a thing as mortgage insurance. That was something that we were striving very hard not to pay. And for some people, we know people that didn't end up doing the 20% and paid mortgage insurance, but they were able to sell their house within a year, make a profit, and get into another house. And then with that profit, they were able to get out of that. So up to you what your move is, but if you think that you're going to be paying mortgage insurance for a long time, consider the extra cost of that on a yearly basis. But for us, again, there are new privileges that attach itself to this house, where we will never have kids, which is a huge expense that people need to save for years ahead of time. We currently don't have dependents. We don't have parents to take care of. They are financially independent. That leaves us in a pretty comfortable spot right now where we're still able to save monthly. You might have noticed that I haven't mentioned any of the first-time homebuyer incentives and all that. I don't think that stuff really helps. I think we only saved about $4,000, which is, I know it's something, but that very quickly got eaten up by closing costs. And the moment that you submit the bid on your home, you're supposed to give a deposit to provide incentive for the seller. And that goes back, that gets absorbed into your down payment cost, but you have to have that money liquid on the day that you're bidding on the house. And our deposit was $45,000. So maybe it's time to consider other options. There are lots of rental friendly upgrades that you can do to your home. And I'll tell you a secret. We've painted our walls before and it's not that bad. You could just paint it back. And if you put a hole, learn to spackle. There's also a lot of free financial help on how to passively grow your income outside of real estate. There's a YouTube couple that I watch here in Toronto, Steph and Den. They provide huge advice on breaking down finances and how to get into making your money work for you and getting in control of your own money. This is just something to shake into perspective that count your blessings. I know that this is not our dream house, but we have a house and we're in on the market. So if this helps in any way, I'm just letting you know that this was not a luck thing. This was not a work hard thing. I mean, partially it was a work hard thing. Take financial advice from me, save money, don't worry about others, because a lot of us were set up in the right way so that we could do this. And if you can't do it, doesn't mean you're not good enough. Thank you so much, Mom and Dad. When you talk about generational wealth, this is the wealth that I was given, is that all the hard work was my parents to give me a good life. And I have this life because of my parents, and I am not gonna give them grandchildren. Sorry.